The city woke with a rhythm all its own. High-rise buildings gleamed in the morning sun, their glass facades reflecting the restless energy of the streets below. Sidewalks overflowed with people, some hurrying to offices, others weaving baskets or selling steaming dishes from modest stalls. The scent of spices mingled with the exhaust of passing cars. Luxury sedans glided past rickety buses and street vendors shouting over the hum of the city. Each sound and smell a reminder of the stark contrast that shaped this urban world. Among the throng, a young man moved with careful steps. Though he was dressed in simple trousers and a faded shirt, his posture and gaze betrayed a quiet confidence. This was the billionaire, a man accustomed to gold and velvet, now wandering unnoticed through the life he had only observed from afar. He paused near a small eatery, its humble sign swaying gently in the breeze, and entered as though stepping into another world entirely. Behind the counter, the waitress moved with practiced ease. Her hands were swift but gentle as she plated food, her eyes always attentive to each customer. When the young man approached, she greeted him with warmth, a smile that seemed to reach past his ordinary clothes, seeing instead the soul beneath. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft yet steady. "What would you like today?" He hesitated, scanning the menu. "Just the special, please," he said, keeping his tone simple. "Of course," she replied, and prepared the meal with care, her movements reflecting the pride she took in her work and the respect she showed to every person, regardless of wealth or status. The billionaire observed quietly. Around him, the city continued its chaotic dance. A luxury car slowed for a pedestrian. A child laughed at a nearby stall. An old man with a wooden cane haggled gently over the price of vegetables. The contradictions of wealth and poverty, of tradition and modernity, played out before him like a living story. When she placed the plate before him, their eyes met briefly. There was no recognition of who he was, no awe or fear, only a simple human connection, grounded in respect and humility. For the billionaire, it was a revelation. In the midst of a world consumed by appearances, here was a reminder that true character shone brightest in the small acts of kindness. "Thank you," he said, his voice low. "You're welcome," she answered, returning to her other duties but leaving a lasting impression. In that simple exchange, the city felt less harsh, and the boundaries between worlds, rich and poor, high and low, modern and traditional, blurred, if only for a moment. Outside, the streets hummed with life, the city breathing like a living entity, carrying its lessons for those who chose to see. And for the billionaire, this ordinary meal had already begun to teach him more than all the riches in his vaults ever could. The morning sun spilled over the city, casting its golden light on towering skyscrapers and the narrow streets below, where the hum of life never ceased. Street vendors shouted their wares, children darted between legs, and buses creaked under the weight of passengers jostling for space. Luxury cars glided silently past the chaos, their polished exteriors a sharp contrast to the worn shoes of the market-goers. In this city of contradictions, wealth and poverty danced side by side, each claiming its space yet never truly mixing. Among the crowds moved a young man, dressed simply in faded trousers and a plain shirt. To the casual eye, he was just another face in the throng. But behind those unassuming clothes was a man whose name could open doors, whose wealth could buy kingdoms. Today, he chose anonymity. Today, he was just like everyone else. He paused to watch a small eatery tucked between towering white buildings. The smell of simmering stew and fresh bread drew him closer. He entered, blending with the ordinary patrons, careful not to draw attention. Behind the counter, a young woman moved with grace and purpose. Her hands were swift and practiced as she served plates of food, her eyes bright with warmth and curiosity. She noticed him immediately, not because of his wealth, she had no way of knowing, but because of the respect in his posture and the quiet attentiveness in his gaze. "Good morning," she said with a gentle smile. "What can I get for you today?" He hesitated, feeling the weight of his decision. I'll have the special, please," he said, keeping his tone simple, almost humble. "Coming right up," she replied, and began preparing the meal. Every movement reflected her pride in her work, her dedication to her craft, and the kindness she extended to each customer, regardless of status. As she worked, he watched the city through the eatery's open windows. The contrast was striking. A luxury car paused at a bus stop. While a street vendor waved his hands frantically, a child ran past laughing. An elderly man leaned heavily on a wooden cane while selling vegetables. In all this, the city itself felt alive, a storyteller revealing the clash between old traditions and the modern pursuit of wealth. Inside, the billionaire struggled with his own heart. The simple act of ordering a cheap meal, of being treated with genuine respect rather than deference, stirred feelings he had long buried beneath his riches. The lure of status had always tempted him, but today, humility and human connection held a stronger pull. The waitress placed a steaming plate in front of him, her eyes meeting his. In that moment, there was no awe of money, no expectation of grandeur, just a simple exchange of respect. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice almost vulnerable. "You're welcome," she replied, returned to serve other customers, leaving an invisible mark on him. For the billionaire, this was more than a meal. It was a lesson. Among the streets filled with both splendor and struggle, he learned that true worth was measured not by wealth or fame, but by the respect and humanity one shared with others. In shedding his identity, he had discovered a truth more valuable than gold. The morning air was alive with the sounds of the city. Birds chirped from the rooftops, mingling with the calls of street vendors and the distant hum of traffic. High-rise buildings stood tall and gleaming, reflecting the sunlight, while the narrow streets below buzzed with ordinary life. Children darted between legs, women balanced baskets on their heads, and men argued playfully over the price of yams and plantains. The scent of fried dough and spices rose from small eateries tucked between modern offices and luxury shops, creating a patchwork of old and new. Inside one of these modest eateries, a young woman moved with quiet purpose. Her name was Ayana, and her spirit was as warm as her smile. She carried plates with practiced ease, speaking kindly to every customer. "Good morning, sir. Your tea will be ready in a moment," she said, her voice gentle yet confident. To her, every customer deserved respect, whether they came in with torn shoes or a polished suit. Ayana wiped her hands on her apron, pausing to watch a little boy try to balance a loaf of bread on his head. She chuckled softly, her eyes reflecting both amusement and compassion. Life had not been easy, but she bore her burdens with dignity. Supporting her younger siblings and her elderly grandmother was a daily challenge. Yet she never allowed it to dull her kindness. It was during this morning rush that he entered, a young man dressed plainly, blending effortlessly into the crowd. His clothes were simple, but his posture and the careful way he observed the room hinted at something unusual. Ayana noticed him immediately, not because of grandeur, but because of a certain humility in his gaze. She approached him with the same respect she offered all her customers. "What would you like today?" she asked, her tone warm and welcoming. He hesitated briefly, then smiled. "I'll have the special, please," he said simply. As she prepared his meal, Ayana moved gracefully around the small kitchen, her actions precise yet filled with care. She balanced a tray of steaming bowls, her face lighting up as she noticed a man watching the city through the eatery's open windows. "It's a busy morning," she said, "but there's always time to enjoy a warm meal." He nodded, observing the way she treated every person with patience and dignity, an unspoken moral thread running through her life. She carried the weight of her family's needs, yet she never let it overshadow the humanity she showed others. In her, he saw a reflection of values he had long forgotten in the pursuit of wealth: respect, humility, and the quiet strength that came from facing life's struggles with courage. When she set the plate before him, their eyes met briefly. In that moment, no words were needed to convey what mattered most: the character of a person, the soul behind the outward appearance. In a city of stark contrasts, Ayana shone as a beacon of integrity and warmth, a symbol of the values that the young man had come searching for. As he took his first bite, he felt a quiet stirring within him, a sense that true richness was not counted in coins or cars, but in the simple acts of kindness and honor that define a life well lived. And for Ayana, the city continued its dance of chaos and beauty, her daily struggle and resilience weaving seamlessly into the tapestry of modern African life. The midday sun poured golden light onto the bustling streets of the city, Skyscrapers gleamed, their glass windows reflecting the motion of vendors, workers, and children weaving through the crowd. Luxury cars hummed past colorful buses stuffed with commuters, and the air carried the aroma of fried dough, grilled meat, and fresh spices. Amidst this modern chaos, a small eatery sat tucked between towering offices, its wooden sign swinging slightly in the breeze. Through the entrance came a young man, simple in appearance, dressed in plain clothes that hid the truth of his immense wealth. His eyes scanned the room carefully, noting the laughter of children sharing a meal, the hurried steps of clerks grabbing their lunches, and the chatter of neighbors greeting each other. He approached the counter with a humble air, and the world outside seemed to fade. "Good afternoon, sir," greeted the waitress, her voice bright and welcoming. Ayana, young and spirited, with skin that glowed under the sunlight streaming through windows, studied him for a moment, but treated him no differently than the others. "What will you have today?" "I'll take the special, please," he replied quietly. His voice was calm, unassuming, carrying none of the pride that his name commanded in the world outside. Ayana nodded, smiling as she moved with practiced grace to prepare his meal. She added an extra piece of bread to his plate and a small sprinkle of spice to his stew, simple gestures that spoke of warmth, care, and the respect she held for every soul who crossed her path. She did not ask why he looked so thoughtful or why he lingered near the window. She simply treated him as a person worthy of dignity. As he sat down, observing the city through the eatery's open door, he noticed a subtle beauty in her actions. The way she greeted a child who had dropped a coin, the way she balanced plates with elegance, the way her laughter reached the corners of the modest room. These small acts of kindness revealed a depth of character, a moral strength that wealth could never buy. He felt a stirring in his heart, a quiet realization that character mattered more than status. In the simplicity of this humble eatery and the genuine care of Ayana, he glimpsed a truth often hidden behind gold and glass. That true connection arises from respect, compassion, and the small gestures that honor the humanity in others. The moment was fleeting yet profound. Outside, the city continued its rhythm of contrasts, opulence brushing against struggle, modernity clashing with tradition. But inside, a silent bond began to form. The billionaire, disguised and unnoticed, and the spirited young waitress shared an unspoken understanding, each unaware of the full story the other carried, yet drawn together by the simple act of kindness and the respect shown across a modest table. The eatery was alive with the hum of the city press just outside its doors. Wooden chairs scraped lightly against the tile floor as patrons nibbled at their modest meals. Sunlight poured through the windows, casting long shadows over the worn tables, each bearing the marks of countless shared stories. From the street came a man, his clothes plain, his shoes unpolished. He moved with quiet curiosity, eyes scanning the modest interior. No one recognized him, and the air of anonymity wrapped around him like a cloak. This was the billionaire, the man whose name graced the city's tallest towers, now disguised as a simple man in search of ordinary life. "Good afternoon, sir," Ayana greeted warmly, her voice ringing through the space. Her dark eyes, full of curiosity and care, met his. "What will you have today?" "The special, please," he answered simply, his voice soft, almost hesitant. As she moved to prepare his meal, other patrons stole glances. Some whispered behind hands, curiosity dancing in their eyes. A young man in a suit muttered his friend, "Who does he think he is?" While a mother nudged her child and smiled, admiration in her gaze. But Ayana remained unaffected, her kindness unwavering, treating him as she would anyone, with dignity, respect, and care. She placed a plate before him, adding a small extra serving without a word. He looked at her, noting the gentleness in her gesture, the honesty in her eyes. It was a rare thing in the city of contrasts, where wealth often commanded respect and humility was easily overlooked. The billionaire observed quietly, noting the unspoken tensions that stirred among the diners. Curiosity, envy, admiration, all reflecting society's constant watch over one another. Yet none of it touched Ayana. She moved with purpose, her energy full of life and warmth, oblivious to gossip or appearances. "Thank you," he said softly, a smile tugging at his lips. "It is rare to meet someone who serves with such care." She returned his smile, humble yet bright. "We all deserve respect, she said simply. Outside, the city continued to roar, luxury brushing past poverty, modernity pressing against tradition. Inside, a moral truth had quietly unfolded. Appearances may deceive, status may blind, but character, the quiet, steadfast kindness of a single soul, shines brightest. In that small eatery, amidst ordinary meals and whispered observations, a silent connection formed. One built not on wealth or appearances, but on the simple, enduring strength of integrity and human warmth. The billionaire, though hidden among them, began to see the city and its people through new eyes, learning that true worth often lives in places overlooked. The city roared around them, a living mosaic of light and shadow. Skyscrapers pierced the sky while the street below teemed with life. Buskers singing old songs, women carrying baskets on their heads, the scent of fried plantains mingling with the exhaust of passing cars. Luxury vehicles glided past worn bus stops where weary commuters waited patiently, a sharp reminder of the stark contrast that defined this vibrant city. Through the bustling streets, a young man moved quietly, his clothes simple, his eyes alert. To the world, he was just another passerby, but inside, he carried the weight of immeasurable wealth. Today, he sought something money could not buy, the truth of ordinary life. He entered a modest eatery, its walls faded but alive with laughter, chatter, and the aroma of fresh stew. "Good afternoon, sir," said Ayana, the waitress, her voice warm, her eyes meeting his with calm curiosity. "What would you like today?" "The special, please," he said softly. Her hands moved deftly, preparing his meal with care, placing an extra portion on the plate without hesitation. Around them, other patrons glanced subtly, whispering to one another, curiosity and mild envy flickering in their eyes. Yet Ayana treated him with the same dignity she gave every customer, her respect untainted by wealth, status, or appearances. As he ate, he watched her move, noting the quiet strength in her steps and the way she spoke to each person with kindness. The gestures were small but telling. A gentle touch on the shoulder, a patient listening ear, a smile that offered comfort without judgment. It was in these acts that her true character shone, far brighter than the gold and jewels he had left behind. For a moment, the noise of the city seemed to fade. Between the billionaire and the waitress, a silent bond began to form, unspoken yet unmistakable, a connection born of respect, humility, and shared humanity. He admired her resilience. She, unaware of his true identity, treated him with trust and honor. Yet in the shadows of the bustling streets, the unspoken truths of society waited. The weight of wealth, the scrutiny of the city, and the judgment of others would soon challenge this delicate connection. Small acts of kindness had planted a seed, but the garden of human hearts was never free from storms. The billionaire left the eatery with a quiet gratitude, glancing back at Ayana one last time. A bond had been forged, not with gold or power, but with the enduring power of morality, humility, and the courage to treat every soul with dignity. In that fleeting moment, the city had become a stage for a timeless lesson. The heart sees what wealth and status often blind the eyes from, and the smallest gestures can shape destinies.